We were all raised by the Kop, I'm not joking. It stimulated me.
When you've got 55,000 people in the stadium, and back in those days, the 60s and the 70s, the noise was incredible.
This is a place and an experience that remains with people all their lives. It was the place to be, the Kop, and the club was just growing. The Beatles were doing a thing, the city was absolutely booming, and as soccer has it, Merseyside was the place to be.
When Shankly used to come and stand up there, and we could pinpoint where he used to sit, we used to all put our arms up and Shankly, 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 and he was such an humble man. He used to just bow there.
Yes, a great save as St John has scored, and that puts Liverpool in the final. After strong the goal. It's Lindsay. And here's Lawler coming round. Goal!
Saturday, April the 30th, 1994. The Kop fills up for the last time. Liverpool fans have been standing here for 88 years. Today, they say their fond farewell to the Kop in their own distinctive way. The procession of former Liverpool heroes is led by Albert Stubbins. Then the great Billy Liddell. The evergreen Ian Callaghan. The indomitable Tommy Smith. Flying winger Steve Highway, goalscorer David Johnson, and David Fairclough, who they called Super Sub. Craig Johnston was back from Australia, and Phil Thompson, a former Kopite himself, brought out his two sons.
A legend to you, Kenny Dalglish.
Kenny's reception spoke for itself. And then, either side of former manager Joe Fagan, Mrs. Nessie Shankly, widow of Bill, and Mrs. Jessie Paisley, wife of Bob. Shankly and Paisley had piloted Liverpool to their premier position in football, and the Kop knew that Shankly had started it all. It was already an emotional occasion when Liverpool and Norwich City took the field for the last match in front of the Kop. Cue Jerry Marsden of Jerry and the Pacemakers.
Hold your head up high. And don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of a storm, there's the golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on, hope in your heart, and you never walk alone. You walk alone. Walk on, God, with hope in your heart. You never walk alone. You never walk alone. Well, love you, the cup. God bless you. Take care.
Liverpool Football Club was founded in 1892. Everton, who'd played on the Anfield Road ground for 8 years, left to go to Goodison Park after an argument about rent with their landlord, John Holding. He stayed to form a new club and called it Liverpool. Within 9 years, his new team were champions of the First Division, and Liverpool won the title again with this team in 1906. That year saw the creation of the Kop, at first just a mound of cinders, rubble and earth, later to be covered with concrete. The open terrace was christened the Kop by Ernest Edwards, then sports editor of the Liverpool Post and Echo. He took the name from the Boer War in South Africa, where 6 years earlier British troops captured a hill called Spion Kop during a battle to relieve the town of Ladysmith. The following day, their commanding officer was killed and the British retreated. When the Boers renewed their attack and regained the hill, 300 British soldiers, mostly from Lancashire regiments and many from Liverpool and Merseyside, died in the battle. One veteran Liverpool supporter who stood on the Kop at Anfield in the early days was Billy O'Donnell.
It was a lovely view from the top of the Kop. There was about 4 or 5 inch wall, that's all. You could look out. The crowds would be out shouting outside at it sometimes. What score is it? They're all to go up. Who scored? You know, needs to be shouting down to them. And then, of course, the 28, 29, the roof went on, and it was real good then.
That roof was then the largest single-span structure on an English football ground. The new Kop was opened when Liverpool played Bury in the first match of the 1928-29 season, Liverpool winning 3-0. Their most celebrated player at that time was the great Irish goalkeeper Elisha Scott, and Billy O'Donnell recalls that he was among early favourites adopted by the Kop.
The most favourites was Elisha Scott, the goalkeeper, and he spent nearly 20 years at Liverpool. He came in 1912, I think it was. He took, the previous goalkeeper was Kenny Campbell. He was a good one and all, but Elisha was brilliant. There was a lot of repartee with the Kop, especially when Parson Jackson was there, the full back. You know, he was a proper Parson, you know, and if anything went wrong, Jackson would get it off Elisha, you know, he didn't hold back any words.
Humour was to play a significant part in the reputation of the Kop. A cartoonist of the time summed up the mood on the day the covered Kop was opened. And it was a major development between the wars. A covered terrace which would hold up to 28,000 standing spectators, 80 feet high at its tallest point. The programme for the match against Bury gave full details of what would become a world-famous institution. When Liverpool ran out now at Anfield, they were assured of a gigantic welcome. All too much for their young mascot before this FA Cup tie against Bolton in 1929. Wanderers were the outstanding cup team of the 20s, winners of the first Wembley final in 1923, winners again in 1926. Good-humoured Liverpool supporters standing on the Kop in that first season under the new roof took their hats off to that sort of achievement. There was a cheerful atmosphere in the ground as 55,000 packed Anfield for this fourth round FA Cup tie, one of the first Liverpool matches to attract the newsreel cameras. The noise from the recently covered Kop made a firm impression on Bolton's cup campaigners, but they survived where many of Liverpool's future opponents would fold, and they forced a 0-0 draw and won the replay at Burnden Park by 5-2. The flagpole on the Kemlyn Road corner of the Kop was formerly the top mast of the Great Eastern, one of the world's first iron ships, which lay broken up in Liverpool docks when the Kop was opened. The flags were out for Liverpool's Freddie Howe in September 1935. He scored 4 goals in a 6-0 win over Everton, to the delight of the Kop. But the cartoonist who poked fun at Everton and Dixie Dean was a shade premature, because only 4 days later, Liverpool lost 6-0 at Manchester City. The headlines were sombre in September 1939. Europe was on the brink of war. The last programme of First Division matches saw Liverpool beat Chelsea 1-0 at Anfield. The winning goal was scored by Cyril Doane, who was making his debut. He had to wait 7 years to resume his league career. During the war, Merseyside suffered its share of bomb damage. The river, a key thoroughfare for trade, was an obvious target, and the city of Liverpool was badly battered in the Blitz. But when peacetime football resumed, Liverpool were the first post-war champions. They sealed the title by winning 2-1 at Wolves in their last match. Billy Liddell, the Scottish international, was now the idol of the Kop, but not far behind him in their affection came Jack Balmer and Albert Stubbins, 2 fine goal scorers. The mood on the Kop was infectious.
You'd get the lads coming down with the trays of sweets before the game, and at half-time, pastels and bars of chocolate, penny bars of chocolate and chewing gum. And around about quarter way off the Kop, you could throw your money down, 10 or threaten, you know, a penny, and he'd throw it up. You always got it. It was always passed up to you, you know, because if you're at the back of the Kop, you had to come down into the wall and get you. Yeah, and then other sites I remember, if someone had fainted at the back of the Kop, he'd get carried right down over the heads, right down to the touchline. Yeah. Things like that, and the tram men, the tram drivers, they always stuck out in my mind, because the trams were wide open them days, and they'd stop outside the ground about 2:45. The drivers would go in, and the conductors, and you'd red face, you know, with the weather and rain, their oil skins. That stood out in my mind, them days.
In 1952, Anfield's record crowd of nearly 62,000 saw Liverpool play Wolves in the Cup, and in 1957, Everton helped open Liverpool's floodlights. But the most significant date was December 1959, and the arrival at Anfield of Bill Shankly. Ian St John and fellow Scot Ron Yates were 2 early Shankly signings. Yates, a giant centre-half and captain, saw Shankly's colossal impact.
He had a great relationship with the crowd, and especially the Kop. You know, I don't know if he intended it that way, but it certainly happened that way. They took to him, you know, like a fish takes to water. They loved him. He was a man of the people, and he was an ordinary guy himself, you know. but the Kop loved him, you know, and he loved them.
In 1962, Liverpool won the Second Division Championship. When they clinched promotion by beating Southampton, the scenes were unforgettable.
And of course, the crowd wouldn't go until, you know, we stayed on the pitch for about 10 minutes, quarter of an hour. And then we went into the dressing room and Shanks came and says, look lads, he says, you're going to have to go back out because they won't go unless you make an appearance, you know. So we came out and of course we'd had almost suits and everything. And didn't I get thrown into one of the ends? I don't know if it was the Kop or one of the ends. I got thrown in, and I'm no joking, there must have been thousands of people patting me in the back, you know. I was full of bruises and everything. I got out of there half an hour later, you know, and I remember getting out, so myself, Ian St John, we went down to a pub in Scotty Road. We used to go out there every game, after every home game, and what a night, what a night.
And what a euphoric time on Merseyside. There was plenty of employment in the docks. Export figures were high. Liverpool held pride of place as an important port on the world trade map. Showbiz stars like Ken Dodd, Jimmy Tarbuck and Jerry Marsden were centre stage, and Liverpool, with the rise of the Beatles, became the acknowledged capital of the pop music industry. Cilla Black was another who made #1. In April 1964, Liverpool under Shankly were on the verge of the First Division Championship.
The Gladiators enter the arena, the field of praise. Saturday's weather perfect for an historic Scouse occasion.
The BBC Current Affairs programme Panorama sent a camera team and reporter to the home match against Arsenal to study the phenomenon they called the Kop.
Liverpool in red shirts were playing before their own spectators for the last time this season. The desire to win was an agonised one. They would be the champions of England, and they wanted their own people to see them become so. They care so much about football. This season, over 2 million people on Merseyside have watched Liverpool or their neighbours Everton, last year's champions. But they don't behave like any other football crowd, especially not at one end of Anfield ground on the Kop. The music the crowd sings is the music that Liverpool has sent echoing around the world.
It used to be thought that Welsh international rugby crowds were the most musical and passionate in the world. But I've never seen anything like this Liverpool crowd. On the field here, the gay and inventive ferocity they show is quite stunning. The Duke of Wellington, before the Battle of Waterloo, said of his own troops, "I don't know what they do to the enemy, but by God, they frighten me." And I'm sure some of the players here in this match this afternoon must be feeling the same way.
An anthropologist studying this Kop crowd would be introduced into as rich and mystifying a popular culture as in any South Sea island. Their rhythmic swaying is an elaborate and organized ritual. The 28,000 people on the Kop itself begin singing together. They seem to know intuitively when to begin. Throughout the match, they invent new words, usually within the framework of old Liverpool songs, to express adulatory, cruel, or bawdy comments about the players or the police. But even then, they begin singing these new words with one immediate, huge voice. They seem, mysteriously, to be in touch with one another, with Wacker, the spirit of Scouse. The spirit is good-humoured and generous when they're winning, but not necessarily when they're losing. On Saturday, they were certainly winning. In an hour, Liverpool scored 5 goals and could have scored more. Their poor, sacrificial victims were Arsenal, Southerners. On Merseyside, football is the consuming passion. It's hard to persuade people to talk about anything else, except perhaps the beat groups, which the Kop crowd do a lot to explain.
Liverpool and the Kop were now known well beyond Merseyside. One Kopite to experience those heady days in the early 60s became one of Liverpool's comedians to make himself a household name. For Stan Boardman, standing on the Kop was not just about going to a football match.
You used to meet your mates in the Kop. That was the days. You used to meet them in the pub across the road, and you'd come over here and you'd stand X marks the spot, somewhere around here, within this area anyway, and you'd meet your mates, all your mates that you work with, all the mates that you go to school with, and we just all stand in the same spot. It was incredible, really, you know, that you'd all sort of congregate in the one. When you think that there was, what, 28,000 people here, you used to manage to get to that exact spot. And I could always pinpoint my spot because it was just right of the post. Where Roger Hunt scored a lot of his goals. He used to come in tearing in there and right into. We saw some great goals here, like Peter Thompson tearing up the wing here, beating 3 and 4 men, and banging in the back of the net in the corner there. You know, Billy Little even. I mean, Billy Little used to take the corners over that side, and you couldn't see the corner flag, and all the Kop used to go forward like that. And these barriers weren't as wide as these. They were only about 6 foot wide. So everybody used to come tearing down here. And it was like a sort of sea of bodies just to see Billy Little taking the corner. Before Shankly came, Liverpool was, you know, nobody knew about Liverpool. I mean, we used to go to the local pitches and everything, all the pitches were done in London. And Liverpool was never ever mentioned. And if Liverpool did get mentioned, it was funny, really. There'd be like an actor saying, yes, and we've got to go up to Liverpool to get the boat. Well, the old picture house used to roar. Yay! And that's the only thing that we used to get, Liverpool, a mention on the pictures. But then when the Beatles started, everyone wanted to know about Liverpool and the Cavern and Town. You couldn't get into a club without a tie in Liverpool them days, the Grafton or the Locarno or any of the clubs in town. So all the lads used to come dressed up. And we used to leave here and go over to the Sandon, right, and get some fish and chips, and then go into the Sandon, which was like a pub with cabaret. So you could go and see all the groups like the Beatles and Jerry and the Pacemakers, the Undertakers, the Maisie Beats, the Remo 4, the Big Three. And they were all down there. They were all in the town. And we used to get down there dead early. You know, I'm talking early, 6:30, 7:30, and we were down there. But we used to go to the Sandon first, which was the first pub across the road. And you can get in there, you'd see Freddie Starr doing his act in there, just starting off. And it was a great time. And because Liverpool hadn't been mentioned before in the 50s or even before that, all of a sudden everybody's talking about Liverpool and the groups. And we were so proud to have come from Liverpool. And we used to stand up here on the Kop and sing the Beatles songs and Jerry and the Pacemakers and any other song that was going at the time. It was a brilliant time.
And a unique time too. In 1965, Liverpool won the FA Cup for the first time in their history.
It's out to Callaghan. Take it too far. It's a goal! And there's the famous trophy. There's the Liverpool chairman raising his hand. Mr. Follows next to Her Majesty. And behind Her Majesty, Mr. Reynolds, the Leeds chairman.
The homecoming was an event in itself. Over 500,000 people packed Liverpool city centre as the cup was carried from Lime Street Station to the town hall. The club was poised for 25 years of unparalleled success, not just at home, but also in Europe. Liverpool were through to the semi-final of the European Cup, and Inter Milan arrived on Merseyside as holders of the World Club Cup, which they'd won as European champions.
And I think the Inter Milan players, you know, the cup got to them. There's no doubt about it, even though they were getting 70,000 over in Italy. Now, I don't think they'd ever witnessed anything what they were going to witness that night. And they helped us tremendously. I think possibly us winning the cup, you know, the week before was helped as well, you know, with a tremendous night.
For many long-standing Liverpool supporters, there has never been a night at Anfield to match this one. Just 3 days after winning the FA Cup for the first time, Liverpool were able to parade the trophy in front of their own devoted supporters.
Here it comes, carried by Jerry Byrne and Gordon Milne, the two injured players. Byrne, who played for all the cup final except 2 minutes with a broken collarbone. Gordon Milne, who couldn't play in the game at all. You'll think that reception's fantastic. Wait till it gets round to the Kop. Strong. Here's number 7, Callaghan. Hunt, the goal. Great goal, a great goal by Hunt. Oh, Yates, what a bad mistake, and now the centre forward. Pero. Surely a goal. Mazzola, yes. Tragic error by Ron Yates. Everyone back in defence now. Hunt, Carl Callaghan, he's done it. It's an intelligent ball by Thompson. And none of his men have broken clear. Now Smith, one of the first to break. Is Strong going on his right. Hunt is onside. Yes. A great save as St. John has scored. And that could put Liverpool in the final. And now the crowd singing, "Go back to Italy." Well, I've never heard words like that to Santa Lucia before in my life.
One captivated Liverpool supporter inside Anfield that night was destined to be a leading Liverpool and England defender of the future, Phil Thompson.
That night against Inter Milan was something special because you look at it and people had heard about the Cup. And okay, through the 50s and everything, it was always been here. Through the 60s it was coming, special, massive people, great songs, humour and everything. But I think that night, 65, I think the Cup came of age. And I think it really did, because there was wit, there was humour on the night and everything. For being such a tense game, the humour still comes shining through. And I think that's the thing which the Kopites have had, which has been unique.
The following season, they lifted Liverpool again, this time in the Cup Winners' Cup.
Callaghan. After Strong, the goal.
That night, you know, knocked off 4:30, like up to the Albert, 5 o'clock, the pub opened, like, you know, and all sorts of Celtic supporters in there, like, and the Liverpool lads all just knocking off, coming in one by one, and it was only about 5 or 6 of us anyway. We all started singing, like, one's not enough, and after that, like, it broke the ice, and there was all sorts of pints of bitter, pints of lager coming over anyway. Into the match, into the match we went, like, you know, oh, the atmosphere again, unbelievable. Anyway, the Kop, like, you know, was that packed in that sense. There was steam coming off everyone, you know, this incredible steam rising up.
Kopite Lenny Woods well remembers that goal scored by the hobbling Jeff Strong. That same season, the Kop celebrated another championship.
This is the Mersey sound of football. These are the whackers who've made Liverpool the most swinging city in soccer. At the slightest pretext, they'll break into song with variations on many themes. Their roar of wrath is fearsome. Liverpudlians are the most professional football supporters in the world. Mind you, they've got something to sing about. Liverpool Football Club have won the league twice and the FA Cup in 3 successive seasons. Never have the honours fallen so thick and fast. The young men of Chelsea, who often look destined for greatness but have yet to achieve it, join in the acclaim. They clap in admiration. In their hearts must be a tinge of envy. Success, they say, breeds success. The gates at Anfield this season have totalled almost £1.25 million. In terms of hard cash, it must approach the £250,000 mark. And in turn, the players are probably the highest paid in Britain. They've always been like this at Anfield, but now it's brought up to date. Once, Billy Little was the king. Now the halo is worn by St. John. Another of the Merseyside idols, Roger Hunt, back in the side after several weeks out with an ankle injury, is responsible for the first goal. Liverpool are in front, and the Kop explodes with delight. Once again, Hunt is the striker. It's his 29th league goal of the season and wins the match and the championship. This team is full of fine players, but much of their success is due to the dedicated, almost fanatical enthusiasm of their manager, Bill Shankly. He's taken a good player and made him better. Shankly believes in everything he does. He's made the team believe. He's made the fans believe. Between them, they've made a mountain, and Liverpool Football Club stands on the peak. So the championship is won, and only the lap of honour remains. Ron Yates, the genial Scottish giant of a captain, carries a fan-made replica of the trophy, but it doesn't matter. The 53,000 salute the few who've won the most gruelling football competition in the world.
The wit and humour for which the Kop was renowned was often directed at opposing goalkeepers. Everton's Gordon West, a rival in derby matches, was proffered a handbag. The Kop conferred their own knighthood on Liverpool's great goalscorer, Roger Hunt, and they chorused careless hands when Welsh international goalkeeper Gary Sprake threw the ball into his own net at the Kop end during a match against Leeds United in the snow.
All the gags used to come, you know, there was times here when supporters used to bring their ashes of the fathers and that, and the husbands and wives used to throw the ashes all over the Kop. We've seen them loads of times. And this fella said, that doesn't happen at Everton. He said, what do you do at Everton? He said, they stuff them and put them in the stands. And last week they did it to a fella. He stuffed them and put them in the stands, and at half-time, he went home. If you look around, could you imagine 28,000 people here? How would you go to the toilet? Well, you had to either do it behind one of them posts, which was too far away, or you did it here, you know, and especially if you've been in the pub before. So a lot of lads used to sort of roll up the Liverpool Echo and wee down the Liverpool Echo, so he didn't splash anybody. And I remember I was bursting to go to the toilet one day, and I said to my mates, I've got to go to the toilet, you know. And I didn't have an Echo, and my mate said, do it in the fella's pocket in front of you. I said, he might feel it. He said, you never. Remember one day, there was a 20-stone guy, supposed to have fainted at the top. Watch out, lads, and he came down, and he come down about 50 miles an hour. On the hands, not falling on the floor, kept right the way down, about 20 stone, boom. Took him about 3 minutes to get from the top right the way down in. And they got him off over the barrier, And he went to the lad with the sweets, bought 2 Mars bars and climbed back in the Kop. The funny thing about it, when the Kop was full here and we were waiting for the game to start, there'd be a balloon on the pitch and the wind would be blowing it. And we'd all be watching this balloon, like sort of hypnotised by it, you know. There's nothing else to do, just talk and watch this balloon going on. And then the wind would sort of slowly start bringing the balloon towards the goal. And you could hear the roar of the Kop. And the balloon would be going towards the goal, and it just missed the post. You go, oh! Then the wind would blow it out again, and it comes again, and 28,000 people go, oh! It was fantastic, and this is what we used to, you know, we should bide our time waiting for the match to start.
The Kop were generous in their appreciation when Leeds won the championship at Anfield in 1969.
And at the end of the match, Billy went to our supporters at the bottom end, where there must have been about 89,000 Leeds supporters there. And he came to the dugout and he said to me, "Great, boss," and he jumped on me. I said, "Oh, it's fantastic, son. At last we've got the championship." And I said, "Take them to the Kop." "Oh, no," he said, "I can't do that." So he walked them for the Kop. I've never seen a sight like it. He walked them from the halfway line towards the Kop. When they got to the 18 yards box, the Kop just went deathly quiet, 27,000 people. And he walked and he walked and he walked till he got right on the dead ball line, only about 6 yards from them now, from the middle of the Kop. And they lifted one chap up on the shoulders and he started singing Champions. And the 27,000 immediately picked up this Champions, and they kept our players there for 5 minutes, clapping and roaring Champions to them. And they just lost the championship, which I thought was fantastic.
That display of sportsmanship prompted the late Don Revie to send the Kop a telegram, and there was another from Football League president Len Shipman. Their behaviour made police patrol at Anfield an easy job for Sergeant Jim Hesketh, whose beat in front of the Kop earned him the nickname the Walrus.
It was a great occasion for me at times because they're so well behaved. It was like coming to the theatre because they had all the songs going later on in the 60s. I used to make fun, christened me, a name called me the Walrus. I didn't know why, but I wasn't offended by it because I've been called other names and Walrus was quite polite. I went to Tenerife on one occasion, the very first time I ever went to Tenerife, and in Puerto de la Cruz, and there was a bar there called Stage Door Bar, and outside was the entertainer was by Barry from Liverpool. So I thought that would be interesting. I'll go in, and as soon as I went in the door, Barry was playing his organ and singing. And when I went in the door, he stopped playing. He said, "Good God," he said, "it's that copper from the Kop." And then he stopped playing, and he introduced me to all the people in the bar. He said, "This man is to the Kop at Liverpool what the policeman on the White Horse was at Wembley." So I said, "I'm not all that good, Barry." Anyway, it was very nice of him to say so.
When Shankly rebuilt his team, the new wave included university graduates Steve Highway and Brian Hall, now the club's community officer.
When you've got 55,000 people in the stadium, and back in those days, the 60s and the 70s, the noise was incredible. It was literally impossible to switch off from it. It got to you, and it did lift you, and it did raise you. In fact, standing in the centre of the pitch, we couldn't carry out a conversation between ourselves. Even if we shouted at one another, there was that much din going on.
The intimidating Anfield sign that stands over the tunnel as the teams run out often frightened the opposition.
I think there was two elements that came into play there. There's no two ways about it, that in those days, the opposition were terrified to come and play here. I can't quite remember the statistic, but it's something like 60 odd 70 consecutive home games without defeat. I mean, that's staggering, isn't it? So, I mean, already there's an inbuilt fear because of that. But then on top of that, the players having to go out and play against 11 red shirts that probably sometimes seem like 22 red shirts, they had to contend with this enormous noise that was going on, you know. And when you've got like 26,000 people on the Kop and they're all singing in unison and they're all chanting in unison, it must have been terrifying. In fact, I can remember one Ipswich player actually saying to me 10 minutes into the second half of a game, he hated playing here. And just at that moment, they subbed him. That was the quickest he moved all afternoon to get off the pitch. He was made up.
Never had the Kop played a bigger part in a Merseyside derby than in November 1970, when a polished Everton side came to Anfield as champions and took a 2-goal lead.
Tommy Smith's really wriggling to get himself out of trouble there. And Whittle, yes, he's got it. Morrissey. And a good return pass, he's onside. Royal unmarked at the back, here he comes. Good goal! Tommy Smith to Highway. And he's over Hurst's tackle. Man in the middle, and he scored! What a goal! Steve Highway! Hughes to take the throw-in. And Highway's off again. And a useful cross. Joshua! And there's the opposition at the other end. Somewhat silent now. And the Kop in contrast. From 2-0 down to 2-2, and they've something to sing about. What a sight and sound that is. Hughes, Highway in the thick of that. Steve Highway, when you think that this time last year he was playing amateur football. This is Lindsay. And here's Lawler coming round. Goal!
And Stevie Highway scored, you know, it's 2-1, and it was buzzing then, it was going, you know, the crowd were going crackers, and then Toshi scored the second to make it 2-2, and with 5 minutes to go, Silent Night Chris Lawler sneaked into on the blind side into the penalty area and scored the winner for us with 5 minutes to go. Well, the place went berserk, it was phenomenal. You couldn't ignore that noise. No matter how professional you were, you had to be carried away by all of that. And afterwards, after the game, you know, sort of driving home and thinking about it, I realised what a fantastic experience it was to be a part of all that emotion and all that fervour for football. And then to realise that I was actually in the centre of that as a player, and all this noise was for me and my teammates. It's an experience that I will never, ever forget.
Neither will Phil Thompson, who fulfilled the dream of every Kopite and came out of the crowd to play for Liverpool.
The great thing happened to me was that I was able to graduate from the Kop to go onto the pitch and be able to do my stuff. And believe me, it was a lot easier on the pitch than being up here, because at least down there you could do something about it. But that feeling of basically being admired by the people on the Kop was a magnificent feeling.
Now, you had a little routine when you came out, didn't you, as an established player?
Yeah, I did. Exactly where I'm standing here was where Owen and myself used to stand week in, week out. Me trying to keep off Burley bouncers and dockers and everything, trying to keep this place right in front of this bar, saving a spot for my brother who was working at the time. So I always remembered where he stood. Actually, these crossbars have changed over the years, and it was actually just in front of the pillar behind you. And I used to stand there, and I used to keep this place. So when I came out onto the pitch, everybody used to have the names sang and everything. It was great. I was thrilled and shouting Phil Thompson. But I used to save a special wave for my brother Owen. I knew where he stood, and then just at the time when it was all quiet, and I used to look up, and I used to give him a wave. He'd wave back. And the lads used to say to him, how the hell can you see your brother? You know, he's in amongst 26,000 people. I said, I know where I stood. I said, my brother, I could look straight up and pick him out. I think any supporters throughout the country who stood on their own terrace would know where they stood and if the brothers were there.
The young Thompson was part of the Liverpool team that won the third championship under Shankly in 1973. They beat Leeds to secure the title. Peter Cormack scored the first goal in front of the Kop. And then Kevin Keegan, who the Kopites had adopted as one of their own from the moment he made his Liverpool debut in 1971, took advantage of an error by David Harvey and made it 2-0.
Liverpool v Leeds for the Championship back in 72-73. A memorable day for me. Thinking about it, I was only 19. Bill Shankly had picked me ahead of Brian Hall at the time, which I was just an up-and-coming lad, and I'd played quite well the week before, and I was in the side, and I'd like to think I was in on merit. Shanks had picked me, and I thought to myself, oh, it's marvellous, great occasion. We stayed in a hotel overnight. I remember coming to the game, coming along Anfield Road, and the nerves, butterflies were going, and I can remember, you could say, to settle myself down, I started singing to myself on the coach, sitting there alongside of the window, and I started singing You Never Walk Alone. It sounds daft and everything. Now, I don't often relate it, but the passion was burning so much inside me, and it was. I was nearly crying, and I'm looking out, and I'm thinking, all those people, they're all looking at me here, and I was singing it, and I got a great buzz. It gave me great belief to go into the game, and as it happened, we played magnificent on the day. I was burning with desire, with pride, and during the game, it was all going well for us. We won the game 2-0, which was magnificent. But on that day, I can remember, I went through a tackle with Alan Clark, and I really did. Block tackle, I just went right through him, carried on. Good move, probably the only time I did. But I can remember the Kop, this is mid-game. They broke out in song and started shouting my name. And God, usually, a lot of the time, you don't hear things or anything when you're playing. But I heard that, and believe me, that was the first time as though I felt I belonged. And they did. They were all shouting my name. I was buzzing. I had a fabulous game, and I was so pleased to be part of that team at that time. 19, I was very, very impressionable age.
For Shankly and Liverpool, that was a memorable season. Not only did they lift the Championship trophy, but they also won the UEFA Cup, Liverpool's first European success and a sign of things to come. The 70s march had started. The following year, 1974, it was the FA Cup again, under the captaincy of Emlyn Hughes. The Kop did not know it then, but this would mark the end of Bill Shankly's reign at Anfield. He retired in the summer of 1974 after nearly 15 years at the helm. Shankly's stories come thick and fast, but the best ones are the simple ones.
Well, I can remember Shanks once saying in public, "You are the people." And I'm thinking, yes, they are, Bill. Yeah, you're right. But these very simple statements that Shanks was brilliant at, this communication he had with large numbers of people. He's the most powerful man I've ever met in my life. The most powerful in the sense that he could communicate so sympathetically with such large numbers of people. I think he understood Liverpudlians, and I think he understood football people, and there was a tremendous empathy between him and those supporters, and his communication skills were the best I've ever seen, not just in words but also in his mannerisms and the way that he conducted himself in front of people. He was a part of the Kop, and he was a part of Liverpool supporters. Arguably Liverpool's greatest supporter, because that's what he was, apart from anything else.
At the Kop end, in the net, behind the goals, there's a casket a foot down. And it was a frosty day, and the groundsman took half an hour to dig the hole. But the casket is there, the man's ashes. They didn't put the ashes on it. The whole casket's in below. And all the rest of the ground around the Kop end's all sprayed with ashes. So the place is it's a shrine, really.
Bill Shankly's enthusiasm was infectious. Local entertainers like Stan Kelly focused on him, not just to brighten up their act in the clubs, but because they were supporters themselves, who stood on the Kop and knew the feeling of belonging to that special army of supporters.
Well, welcome to the Spion Kop at Anfield. This is sometimes called the Mecca of soccer. And I'm rather glad you could come, because I hate singing on my own. In fact, every week, thousands of Kopites assemble here to perform a very strange ritual. The very word Kopite sounds religious, and this is probably the nearest analogy you can put to the goings-on here. We have our dogma, we have our shrine, and this is the shrine, in fact. We have our hymns of praise, and they're sung here every Saturday. And when they die, they have their beliefs of life after death, and they ask the club, can their ashes be scattered here on the Kop to give them immortality like the club itself? My favourite one is when we were 3-0 up against Wrexham in a cup tie, and a lad behind me shouted, "Don't score anymore, for God's sake, or they'll cut our water off." And this is all part of the myth that Wales has a big tap somewhere that supplies Liverpool with water. On other occasions, when the ball is kicked out of play, you'll hear the cry, "Forget the ball, get on with the game." I think there are various centres of creativity, and the ripples spread so quickly because everyone is in tune with these small centres.
Bob Paisley knew what he meant. He'd been at Anfield since 1939. When he took over from Shankly as manager, Liverpool again reached the final of the UEFA Cup. Next came the European Cup and that Saint-Étienne match.
Keegan. Djokovic has missed it! Case didn't get it right away. Rushdown, brilliant save! Carries all through the challenge from Neil. This could be dangerous. 4 men forward supporting him. This is Rushdown. He's got a chance with his right foot. Brilliant save by Clemens. Jean-Vion to Senegal. Bartonai. Bartonai shot swerved and goes in. Callaghan, Neil, and Toshak going after it. Kennedy, 2-2. And Fairclough is onside. This now could be interesting. Fairclough! Super sub strikes again.
David Fairclough's goal against Saint-Étienne, which won that quarter-final, is arguably the most treasured scored in front of the Kop. Here's Liverpool's eloquent supporter, Rogan Taylor.
I remember the Saint-Étienne night here, as of course everyone who is here does. It's one of the greatest nights that the Kop's ever seen. When it came to the third goal that night, the goal that was required to take us through to the semi-finals of the European Cup, I remember the moment that that goal was slipped in, instead of turning and doing what everyone else was doing, I just turned and watched. And it was like being in a living Hieronymus Bosch picture. Faces twisted and contorted. You couldn't tell whether it was agony or ecstasy, except because you knew it was ecstasy. But the whole picture was like a medieval vision of another world, a strange place inhabited by people of enormous passions. To be in the Kop is an experience of almost religious intensity. It's not just the physical intimacy of fellow worshippers shoulder to shoulder in the temple. It's also the mental, the psychological oneness, that people are concentrating on a particular object, a desired thing, a goal, a victory. And that brings them together, rather like religious experience does for groups of worshippers who are singing songs, jumping up and down. And so Saturday here is the holy day, and this is where the worshippers gather.
Strong stuff, but then it was a vintage year. Liverpool were chasing the treble. They won the championship, lost in the FA Cup final, and then the Kop moved camp to Rome for the European Cup final.
One time, like we were just before the Rome Cup final, we were coming back from Newcastle, and you know, we were coming on a train called a 6-5 special. We used to call it because it took, you know, it took 5 hours. But, you know, 6:05, you got in 11:05. Anyway, we started on this song, like, you know, we're on our way to Roma, to the tune of Arrivederci Roma, you know, and as I say, the lads, like, you know, me and my mates, like, you know, once we got it going, like, my mate the composer, like, you know, and we started singing it, like, and off it took. And all of a sudden, like, when we eventually got to Rome, you could hear it all right at the Liverpool end of the ground.
Along with the 1965 FA Cup triumph, this was the ultimate experience for Liverpool supporters. To be crowned Kings of Europe, to win the Champions Cup again the following year, and then for a third time in 1981, this time with ex-Kopite Phil Thompson as captain. But the following season, Liverpool unusually slipped into the bottom half of the table by Christmas. That Anfield sign seemed to be stimulating the opposition, and Bob Paisley went into print to warn the Kop against complacency.
I would just like to have a little bit more of that and real encouragement and that. And I think the players would respond more. It's all right saying that they get paid well enough, they should respond to anything. They're out there to do a job, but like every other job, if you get a little bit of encouragement, you'll perform that little bit better.
Paisley's words had the desired effect. Liverpool knew victory over Spurs would ensure the championship.
A packed house at Anfield. The Kop was full at 2 o'clock. And a fantastic reception from the Kop for Ray Clements. And he responds.
Spurs led 1-0 at half-time, but then Liverpool and the Kop got together.
In comes Lawrenson. Lee. Dalglish. Who's up there? Oh, Dalglish is through. Kenny Dalglish. Miller's header. It's going to come to Whelan. And Whelan makes it 3-1. That is the championship now.
And so it was again the following year, 1983. The Kop acknowledged Paisley's 5th title in 7 seasons, and he chose this moment to retire, the most successful manager in the history of the English game, with 20 trophies to his name, including 3 European Cups and 3 League Cups in succession. Liverpool kept the job in their famous boot room. Paisley's successor was Joe Fagan, who in his first season won a treble. But a year later, tragedy struck at Liverpool's 5th European Cup final in Brussels. A wall collapsed in the Heysel Stadium after fighting between rival blocks of supporters. 39 people lost their lives in the crush. Their memory is perpetuated by a plaque inside Anfield and by a memorial in a garden in Turin. Joe Fagan resigned and was replaced by Kenny Dalglish, and in his first season as player-manager, he led Liverpool to the double.
Yes! The player-manager scores the goal that may edge Liverpool nearer to their 16th championship.
The cup final victory over Everton meant that Liverpool had broken new ground again.
Liverpool have won the double.
At the start of the 1987-88 season, the Kop was out of action. An old Victorian sewer underneath the famous terrace collapsed, and while repairs were carried out, Liverpool had to play their first 3 matches away from home. Those who waited were rewarded with another sparkling season. Liverpool strolled to the championship with arguably their finest attacking force, and one performance against Nottingham Forest rivaled anything the Kop had ever seen.
Barnes, Houghton goes again, he's through. Ray Houghton. Oh, Beardsley. Corner, great stop by Steve Sutton. Mann and Spetman combining beautifully. McMahon's shot, Barnes hit the post. Beardsley, he seems to be able to find space and find Aldridge. And that is another superb Liverpool goal. Beardsley. And now he goes alone. Still Beardsley. Hit the bar. Barnes. Working it to Houghton. Aldridge. Gillespie. Barnes against Chettle. Oh, look at Barnes there. They're waiting for the pullback. Beardsley! Oh! A glorious goal again. Oh, well played, Spackman. And Beardsley. And Spackman. And Aldridge! It's 5!
But then, a year later, the Hillsborough tragedy engulfed Liverpool Football Club.
This became a shrine to Hillsborough, and as a direct result of Hillsborough, all the grounds in this country in the Premier League and the First Division will be all seated by 1994. So in those two ways, this terrace culture has influenced football in the most profound way. And I'll never forget one of the most moving moments in my life, I think, was not actually in the Kop, but at home on the Wednesday after the Hillsborough disaster. And Inter Milan were playing that night in the European Cup, must have been the semi-final. Before the game, the whole of the stadium sang, "You'll Never Walk Alone." And I thought to myself that night, what an accolade to this place, to these people, to this club, that those people in Northern Italy should sing our hymn.
One mustn't forget the compassion that was showed by the Kop, by the members, to those 96 who died at the time. And I think in the joyous occasion that we should celebrate the Kop goal, we should also always remember the people who did die. Many of them, okay, not all stood on the Kop, other parts of the grounds, but I think the days that passed after Hillsborough, everything centred around the Kop, and I think it became a shrine to Liverpool FC, to those people who died. This place was full of scars, flags, flowers, the goal mouth and everything. And I think as things come about that day, I think Liverpool people came with the country because we'd all had our problems. I think that mustn't be forgotten in the times of passing for the Kop as it is today.
Liverpool's European exile ended in 1991. The Kop welcomed them back to the UEFA Cup and helped them turn round a 2-goal deficit.
And McManaman gets away, and a straight penalty. Mahe the challenge from behind. Moby against Martini, and Liverpool lead. Cracking penalty. Curled right on top of the handbag in the corner of the net. Houghton, Moby is square. And the return ball comes in for Houghton. And Marsh scores! Mulvey, Walters!
scores!
Shades of Inter Milan and Saint-Etienne. The contribution of the Kop to that victory was warmly praised by manager Graham Souness. In 1994, the last season that Kopites could stand on their favoured patch, Liverpool staged another storming comeback. They were 3-0 down to Manchester United.
Dix. Ince with the tackle, away by Bruce. Club trying his luck, yes! Amazing! Right for Rush. Bruce got a foot in. Came off Kane. This is Clough again. He's scored again! Hold the back pages. Liverpool are back in the races with a second goal from Nigel Clough. Here's Barnes. Instant control. Crossed in by Fowler. The headers by Ince. Ruddock. Nice touch too. Stig Björneby. Ruddock, yes! The Liverpool comeback is complete with 11 minutes to spare. Delight inside a rocking Anfield.
The final derby match in front of the Kop saw a stirring Liverpool comeback after Dave Watson had given Everton a first-half lead. Immediately from the restart, Liverpool equalised in double quick time. Ian Rush, record goalscorer in Merseyside derbies, struck again. The winner followed a superb through pass from John Barnes, and Liverpool's latest Kop hero, teenager Robbie Fowler, finished off Everton. And so to April, and the last home match of the season. The programme called it the Kop's Last Stand. It was a flag day.
Ian Crook to take the kick. In early, there's the near post ball for Sutton. Goss, it's in! Jeremy Goss, who made a habit of that earlier in the season, has sent the Norwich supporters into a scarf-waving celebration on a day when it's really Liverpool who stunned there on the Kop, who were expecting to be greeting the goals.
But a 1-0 defeat for Liverpool didn't dilute the atmosphere or spoil the mood. The fans stayed behind to savour their last hour on the Kop and to pay their respects to its place in their lives. For many, just to be there with their memories was the perfect way to say goodbye. And it was left to the players to have a last word for the fans on the Kop.